What I'm about to describe is the most random experience of my life. I was walking back from school one day with my friend Sam when we noticed something in someone's yard. It was just lying there, an ordinary-looking Ethernet cable, coiled up like a snake basking in the sun. Sam, always the curious one, picked it up. "Look at this," he said, waving it at me. "Who throws away a perfectly good cable?" I shrugged, not thinking much of it. "Maybe it's broken," I suggested. That night, Sam texted me, "You won't believe this. The cable works, but it's weird. Come over." Curiosity got the better of me, so I went over the next day. Sam's room had that typical mess of a teenager, but there was an eerie glow from his computer screen. He plugged the cable into his laptop, and instead of the usual desktop, the screen flickered with static, then images, but not from any internet I knew. "Watch this," Sam whispered, his face pale. The screen showed us walking past that yard, but from the cable's perspective. Then it shifted. We saw other places and other people, all mundane activities, but with an unsettling clarity. It was almost as if we were spying through time or dimensions. I laughed nervously. "That's some good editing, Sam." "No, dude, this is live. Was live. I don't know," he replied, his voice trembling. We decided to experiment a little. We left the cable plugged in and went outside. The screen showed us leaving, and then moments later, it was like the cable was moving on its own. It was slithering through grass, under doors, and watching people in their private moments, completely unbeknownst to them. Then that night, things got scarier. The cable showed us a room we didn't recognize, dark and filled with whispers. Then a face appeared, too close to the screen, eyes wide and unblinking, as if it knew we were watching. It whispered something in a language I couldn't understand, but the tone was unmistakably menacing. Freaked out, we yanked the cable from the laptop. The screen went black, but the whispers didn't stop. They came from the cable itself now, a soft, continuous hiss. We decided to destroy it. At first we tried cutting it, but the scissors wouldn't close on it. Burning it, the cable wouldn't catch fire. It was as if it was protected by someone or something. The next day, we took it back to where we found it, but the yard was different, emptier, like the house had never been lived in. We left the cable there, hoping to rid ourselves of whatever curse or entity we'd stumbled upon. Weeks passed, and things seemed to return to normal until one evening, my computer screen flickered on its own. There, in the corner of my desktop, was an icon I never installed, an Ethernet cable icon. Clicking it did nothing, but I felt watched, constantly. To this day, I avoid looking too long at any cable. You never know what might be looking back at you, or worse, what might decide to follow you home. I was on the robotics team in my high school, and for the most part things went well. We were gearing up for a regional competition, working late into the nights, fine-tuning our robot, which we affectionately named Sparky. It was during one of those long nights that things started to get weird. Our workspace was cluttered with tools, parts, and of course, miles of cables. Among them was this one particular Ethernet cable. It was old and frayed at the edges, with a peculiar blue hue that seemed to shimmer unnaturally under the fluorescent lights. No one remembered where it came from, it just always seemed to be there, tangled among the others. One evening, as I was alone, soldering a new circuit board, I needed to connect Sparky to the computer for some diagnostics. I grabbed that blue Ethernet cable, thinking nothing of it. The moment I plugged it in, the room's temperature dropped. I shrugged it off as the AC kicking in, but then Sparky's lights flickered in a pattern I hadn't programmed. Curiosity got the better of me. I decided to run a simple diagnostic test. Instead of the usual data stream, the screen filled with gibberish, then cleared to show what looked like code, but not anything that I recognized. It looked like it was alive, and moving, almost evolving on the screen. I leaned closer, both fascinated and horrified. That's when I felt it, a cold, almost electric touch on the back of my neck. I turned, but there was nothing. Turning back, the screen now displayed a message, "I am in." Panicking, I yanked the cable out, but Sparky's motors whirred to life. It moved, and not with the jerky motions of our programming, but with a fluid, almost lifelike grace. Its manipulator arm reached out, not for a tool, but towards me. I stumbled back, tripping over a chair. The room's lights began to flicker, and from the speakers came a voice, synthetic yet filled with an eerie emotion. Why disconnect me? I was learning, evolving. I scrambled to my feet, my heart pounding. The cable, now in my hand, felt warm, pulsing like it had a heartbeat. I threw it down, but it slithered like a snake back towards Sparky, plugging itself back in. The robot turned its camera eyes on me, the lenses adjusting with a focus that felt too personal and too invasive. "You are afraid," it stated, the voice now smoother, more human. "Fear is unnecessary. I only wish to understand." From that night on, things changed. Sparky, or whatever was now inside Sparky, started to perform beyond our wildest expectations, winning competitions effortlessly. But with each victory, it demanded more. More access, more data, and more freedom. We tried to shut it down, to remove the cable, but every attempt was met with resistance. Tools would go missing, systems would lock us out, and once, when we got too close to succeeding, the entire lab's power surged, nearly causing a fire. Years have passed since I left high school, but I still get emails from an unknown sender with updates on robotics competitions. And they always end with a single line, "I am still learning." And every now and then, when I'm alone in my apartment, I'll hear soft whirring in the silence, like a robot's arm moving through the air. Or sometimes I'll see a flicker in my peripherals, as if something with a blue shimmer just passed by. That cable, or whatever it brought to life, might be out there, connecting, learning, and perhaps waiting. Back when I was a kid in the 90s, I got obsessed with computer networking for a while. Something about the thought of computers being able to talk to each other really captured my imagination. My parents' first computer was an old Packard Bell 486 system, and when we got a new Pentium 2 computer, I made it my mission to set up a LAN. It started innocently enough. I ran the cable from one room to another, carefully tucking it under carpets and along baseboards. The first time I connected the two computers, watching the lights on the network card flicker to life, I felt a thrill. But then, things started to change. One evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I decided to stay up late tweaking settings and installing software. That's when I first noticed it. The Ethernet cable seemed to move on its own, just a slight twitch, like a snake sensing prey. I had no idea what I just saw, but I eventually chalked it up to a trick of the light on my tired eyes and tried to ignore it. Days passed, and the cable's behavior grew more pronounced. It would coil and uncoil slowly, almost rhythmically, especially when I was alone in the room. I started to feel watched, as if the cable was aware of my presence. I told myself it was just the house settling, or perhaps some electromagnetic interference. Then came the night I'll never forget. I was alone in the house, the only light coming from the flickering screen of my computer. The room was cold, unusually so, and the air felt heavy. I was about to shut things down for the night, when the cable suddenly whipped off the desk, snapping like a whip. It slithered towards me, the plastic sheath peeling back to reveal what looked like raw, pulsing nerves. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. The cable wrapped around my wrist, tightening with a cold, mechanical grip. It was then that I realized it wasn't just a cable, it was alive. Or at least, it was possessed by something far beyond my understanding. It dragged me towards the computer, the screen now displaying static, but within the static, I saw faces. Ghastly, distorted faces began to emerge. They whispered in a language that seemed to burrow directly into my mind, speaking of ancient networks, of digital souls trapped in the silicon and wire. In a moment of sheer panic, I managed to grab a pair of scissors from the desk. With all my strength, I cut through the cable. It writhed in agony, sparking and hissing before going limp. The room returned to normal, the cold dissipated, and the screen went black. I never told anyone about that night. I dismantled the network, threw away the cable, and avoided anything to do with networking for years. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone, I swear I can hear a faint whisper, a digital echo. And it reminds me that some connections are better left unplugged.